guest is Colin Hanks, actor, director, producer of the upcoming HBO Sports documentary, Say Hey, Willie Mays. It debuts November 8th on HBO and HBO Max. I have had a chance to screen the doc. It is excellent. Colin, thanks for joining me on Sports Business Radio. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. All right. So before we get started with the doc, we have something in common that I found during my research. We both attended Loyola Marymount University.
Really?
Yes, I was there before you. I'm a little older than you. I was there when Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball and Paul Westhead were there.
Well, I was going to say, was it the Hank Gathers era? Because that tends to be the watermark between eras.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually the radio broadcaster for KXLU radio when I was calling the game the night that Hank collapsed and died.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So that was
wow.
a traumatic experience for me. You've probably seen the 30 for 30 on ESPN, the Guru of Go with Paul Westhead. So yeah, what a time to be at Loyola Marymount. But how did you enjoy your time at LMU?
The time that I was there, I enjoyed very much, maybe a little too much, but that's college. No, I loved going to Loyola. It was a fantastic stop for me. And yeah, I still have a lot of friends from there and a lot of good memories.
That's great. All right. The origin of your sports teams. I know you're a huge LAFC fan. I don't want to jinx anything, but they're doing really well right now. They're 2 wins away, right?
They're 2 wins away. Yes. No, very excited about that. But yeah, my allegiances can be confusing to people. I never expect anyone to know someone's sports allegiances right away, because Lord knows they could be very odd. But I had family in Los Angeles, obviously, but I grew up primarily in Northern California. And so when I was a kid growing up, it was the San Francisco Giants, San Francisco 49ers. That was the extent of the Northern California. But then I would go to hockey games in Los Angeles, because this was before they had the Sharks.
Right.
So the LA Kings were a big one for me. And then I moved to Los Angeles permanently around the time I went to Loyola in '96, and really only had the Kings because they were the only LA team I really truly felt comfortable rooting for, because I still had my Sacramento roots and would follow the Sacramento Kings a little bit.
Which not many people admit.
No, I mean, I rarely admit it. Now, I'll admit I totally fell off, and I'm now just like, I'll watch basketball just in general, just, the league. But I was really, truly salivating to find another team in Los Angeles that I could root for without reservation. And luckily LAFC provided me that space. And now I'm just obsessed. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, I've seen some of your Instagram posts, and I mean, you're at every match. And I was just in Europe. So I went to Premier League for the first time, and I had never been to Premier League. I saw Arsenal and Brentford, and that was quite an experience for me. But, MLS is fantastic. And LAFC, what a beautiful stadium. And I've never been to a match, but it looks like that's a great environment there.
I had always wanted to have an insane soccer football experience in Los Angeles. And I'd gone to Sounders games. I'd gone to Timbers matches. So I'd seen they have it in the States,
right,
to a degree, but I was really hoping that Los Angeles would sort of have that. And I just didn't necessarily find that to be the case down in Carson with the Galaxy. But, funny enough, you mentioned the Premier League. I had arranged for tickets about a little over a month ago. I had arranged for tickets to go see Liverpool, my team that I support, play at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea, and then the Queen died and the game was postponed. So I had my tickets, I was ready, and then it was taken away from me. So now I still have yet to go see my beloved Reds play in person. So yeah, that's another team allegiance that I have there.
Well, I hope that happens for you soon.
Me too.
All right. So you mentioned diehard San Francisco Giants fan. You were at the clinching victory in 2010 when they beat Texas in the World Series, right?
I was at all 3 games in Texas. Yeah. I had just wrapped up a television show that would have been filming in Dallas that entire year. So I got to be there for for all 3 games in Texas, which was an absolute dream.
Yeah. So when you have the opportunity to work on this documentary for one of the greatest baseball players ever and someone synonymous with the Giants, how did this all come together?
Well, it had kind of been a dream, one that I thought was a little bit far-fetched. My producing partner, Sean Stewart, who I make all my documentaries with, we had always sort of circled Willie as sort of the GOAT. That would be
Right.
within the Giants organization. That would be the story that we would love to be able to tell. Now, obviously, there's a Barry component that is that's maybe another podcast. We could talk about that. But with Willie, at least it seemed like that one would be one that would not be so ludicrously far away that we wouldn't be able to sort of make a play. And so Sean had been trying for years and years and years to reach out to Willie and his squad. We had made a short 30 for 30 about the Crazy Crab, which was an ill-fated San Francisco Giants mascot. So we had relationships with the Giants. And really, it's up. I give all the credit to Sean Stewart, our producer, one of my co-producers on this. He really sort of just refused to take no for an answer. I don't know if he ever was given the answer no, but he just kept hustling. And as fate would have it, it wasn't. It just didn't line up for me to be able to direct the project. But we ended up falling in with Nelson George, who is an incredibly talented filmmaker, and partnered with Spring Hill Entertainment, LeBron James's production company, and we were able to get a team in place that I think was of caliber enough for Willie to sort of say, "All right, well, I'll listen to you guys." So we went up to San Francisco and got to go to a Giants game and watched some of the Giants game with Willie and talked with him in his suite and got to get to meet him and just sort of tell him, our vision for the film and what we wanted to do and our sort of code of conduct for how we like to make our documentaries. He signed on. I think we signed the deal January of 2020, and then the world shut down.
Wow.
So we were there was a rain delay for us. But we were able to make a film and really just could not be more honored to be a part of it.
Well, and one of the magical things about the doc is Willie Mays is 91 and he is part of the doc. And much like The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, if Jordan's not a part of that doc, it's not nearly as good. To me, if Willie Mays isn't part of this, it's not as good. And he's still so sharp at 91 and has a good sense of humor and has all the memories still and recalls certain situations and times of his life. And I thought that was really neat because, again, this better than me, but he's 91. He might not be here that much longer. So to get him to sit down for this, much like the John Madden doc, right? Like he sat down with Tom Rinaldi and everyone, and then he passed shortly after. So you're like, I'm so glad we got to hear from him and he participated in this before he left us. So
absolutely.
It was great. I thought having him participate was really one of the keys to the success of this.
Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say that, that there was a component for all of us in which we really wanted to be able to properly tell Willie's story and have him tell it before that chance was no longer available to us. Right. And part of the sort of thesis, if you will, of one of the reasons why we felt, now was the time. I'm not of the generation that got to see Willie play.
Right.
And so all I heard were stories about how great Willie was. Mm-hmm. And, Willie not only was so incredible on the field, but the manner in which he carried himself on the field and off was incredibly he was the same individual on and off the field. There was no change. He let his play do the talking, and he was at he came up at such a fascinating time, not only in baseball history, but in American history, coming up in the Negro Leagues, signing with the Giants at an incredibly young age in New York at the dawn of, the television era, then moving with the team to San Francisco, during the height of the civil rights movement in the West Coast, and expanding baseball over there, as well as, being a part of the community out there. He was such a unique figure that I don't think, in terms of younger generations, that he has, people don't understand Willie Mays the way they may understand a Babe Ruth or a Joe DiMaggio, or, some of these players that were maybe a little bit more salesmen in addition to being great ball players. And Willie was just, he was truly one of a kind. He was, one of, arguably one of the first, Black athlete superstars that, really were ambassadors for the game. And it was just, to be able to dive into his story and his background and really understand just how much the man accomplished and what a unique talent he was on the field. It was really incredibly special to be a part of and hear firsthand.
Were you able to sit in on any of the interviews with him?
No, unfortunately, I wasn't. My schedule, because I have this other gig of wearing makeup and pretending to be other people for a living. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to actually be there on any of the shoot days with Willie. But like I said, I got to watch a game with Willie Mays. I don't know how it can get any better than that.
That's true.
But the bonus is I did, I got all of the raw footage, all of the raw interviews as they were shot. And so I would, as the dailies would come in, I would, hear all of the stories that Willie said, that Barry Bonds said, Vin Scully, Bob Costa, Reggie Jackson, the list goes on and on of names. And so I was just geeked to just watch all the raw footage, and the good news is that it cuts together even better.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. And, again, you got Vin Scully before he left us. And, Bob Costas is one of the best. And, all the different people, all the different voices, but the one that stood out to me the most, to be honest with you, was Barry Bonds.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I don't want to give anything away, but the depth that you go into in the doc on the relationship between Willie and Bobby Bonds, Barry's dad, and Barry was really good. I didn't really know what that dynamic was. And Willie Mays is very much a father-like figure to Barry Bonds. And that was another person who I thought really added to the documentary, was getting Barry Bonds to sit down and talk about Willie and talk about his dad. And, Barry Bonds is a polarizing figure himself, and also, a 5-tool player like Willie Mays was. So I thought having his voice in this documentary really added to it.
Well, there for us as filmmakers, you really can't have a Willie Mays documentary if you don't have Barry Bonds in it, because there is such a personal connection between the two. Barry is Willie's godson. One of the things that we noticed very, very early on in the film is that Willie always referred to taking care of people, or people taking care of him. Mm-hmm. When he came into the league and he's talking about, Piper Davis taking care of him. He's talking about Leo DeRocher taking care of him. He's talking about, when he's in San Francisco and you got Marichal and all these guys, these Spanish players coming in, he's taking care of them. So there's always a sense that sort of baseball takes care of their own. And that relationship that Willie had with Bobby Bonds, which again, a player before my generation, I didn't know much about, but Barry was my generation. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that there was a connection there, but I didn't know how deep it was. And we just kept saying, it's the Willie Mays documentary. If we don't have Barry in this,
right,
it's not going to feel right.
Yeah.
And we spent a great deal of time talking with Barry's team. We had spoken with him very briefly at the beginning of filming, when because he's in there for Willie's birthday, in the film. You see Barry there, and you see how involved he is, and the smile he has on his face when he's around Willie. And after a lot of talk and going back and forth, we were able to get Barry. And I'll tell you what was so remarkable about that interview is it was about 2 hours, and he was so vibrant and happy. And it's a side of Barry that I don't think people have seen. Truly,
Totally
I mean,
agree.
I think the public has not really seen Barry like that before, and that's because Barry's a very reserved guy. Arguably, you could say he got that from Willie, because Willie is very much the same way at times. But you just see Barry open up and talk about, the love that he has for Willie. And, the real treat, I mentioned watching all the raw footage. The first hour he was talking about Willie on the day. And then the second hour was just him talking about baseball, how much he loves baseball and hitting and the intricacies of the game and his passion for it. And as a baseball fan, I was geeked just to watch that, just to see Barry light up and talk about the game in that manner. And, we were very proud of the fact that, we went to Barry saying, this is the film that we want to make. We want you to be a part of it. It's not going to be the same without you. And for him to agree to that, and then we got a text from Barry afterwards in which it said incredibly gracious, kind things about the film, and was just so happy to be a part of it.
Wow,
which made us just over the moon.
That's quite an endorsement right there.
Yeah.
So the other part that I loved was the old footage and the old images. I mean, dating back to the Negro Leagues in Birmingham. I had never seen some of those pictures of Willie when he was young and he was playing in the Negro Leagues. And, even, I don't want to give anything away, but, when he is trying to buy a house in San Francisco, and, here's Willie in his house, and, his son comes on and says he put in the spiral staircase, is kind of like Batman going down to get into the back car and go to the game. There was just so many really cool elements that you guys dug up. How did you do that?
Well, part of it is the tenacious producing of my partner Sean Stewart. I mean, he's not above hopping in a car, driving up to someone's house somewhere in Northern California and finding Super 8 footage or whatever. I mean, the amount of film canisters we amassed on this project was pretty astounding. It helped that Barry, and I mentioned this earlier, it helped that Barry really was, not Barry, Willie. It helped that Willie was sort of one of the central forces at the dawn of television covering baseball. And so there is a ton of old footage of Willie in some form or another, whether it's him playing stickball with kids, on the streets of, of New York, or him moving to the Bay Area and the issues he had purchasing a home there. There is a ton of newsreel, footage, a ton of interviews and all that sort of stuff. And really that's kind of part of, part of the documentary toolkit is you got to be a little bit of a detective tracking this stuff down.
Yeah.
And so you got to be willing to hop in a car and drive to some stranger's house somewhere in Northern California to see what kind of footage they got. But we were able to just amass an incredible pool of B-roll and footage. And it's all there in the film.
Wow. Well, it was really well done. And, like I said, from getting Willie to participate, to Barry, to all the other voices that you had, to the footage that you dug up. When people watch this, what do you want them to take away?
Well, I would love for them to have just a better understanding of who Willie Mays was as an individual and as a person. And I think, if we've done our job, we've been able to highlight the kind of man that Willie was, because he really did carry himself the same as he did on the field and off the field. What you saw, what you saw was what you got, and what you got was one of the greatest of all time. But also, I hope people understand the historical significance that Willie has. Rightly so. Jackie Robinson is an all-time great and a historical figure who is incredibly important in the history of our culture, not just of baseball. But Willie was right there, and was, just as vibrant, just as important. And I think what is interesting was perhaps a lot quieter than people expected him to be. And so, I'm really excited that people, hopefully will get a better understanding of the kind of player that he was and just how good he was, but also how important he was within, the American Civil Rights Movement, and pushing, awareness, and what it meant to be a Black athlete at that time. Willie is a huge part of that. He really was, as big as, Michael Jordan, or any of these sort of, greatest of all time. And yet I think he gets overshadowed,
right.
And unfairly so. And so we just hope that people have, a good time watching the film, and enjoy the film for what it is, but then also walk away, a little bit smarter.
I mean, I've often thought, can you imagine if he played in this era of social media and video clips? That catch would have been getting 1 million views in 30 seconds. I mean, he would have been consumed very differently than he was back when there wasn't social media and media like today.
Without a doubt. And, that is another reason why we wanted to really showcase Willie and just how unique he was, because if he was playing today, there would be an avalanche of talk every single day about, did you see what Willie Mays did last night? Did you see what Willie Mays did yesterday? And, a majority of it would be jaw dropping, and, there would be people that complain, as well, a little too flashy, a little too much. Why does he got to catch it way down here? You should catch it up top. All of those things. For his era, he was the best. And I think when you're measuring the best, it's got to be amongst all the eras. And if he had played in our modern era, there's no doubt that they would call him the greatest of all time.
Just a couple minutes left. Like you mentioned earlier, you spend most of your time as an actor, but I love when you get pulled in, like on this project, as a producer. I see upcoming, you're working with Ryan Reynolds on a John Candy doc, which I just love John Candy. So I was so excited to see the two of you coming together for that doc. I know it's going to be as well done as this Willie Mays one, but what gets your juices flowing to be a producer and to get pulled into a project like Willie Mays or John Candy?
Well, it's the story. It's a subject matter. Willie, obviously, there's a lot out there about Willie, books, whatnot. With John, that one's a little bit unique because Ryan really came to me saying, "Hey, I think there should be a John Candy documentary." And we had a long conversation and sort of talked about what that could be, and he was very patient and gracious, and sort of let me sort of have a little time to sort of wrap my head around the concept, because you don't want to just, you can make any sort of, that should be a documentary is kind of like, is a phrase I hear very often, and more often than not, after about 4 minutes, you go, I don't think that should actually be a documentary. But Ryan was very gracious and really gave me some time to sort of crack it a little bit and come up with a narrative and an idea and a focus that I felt really would warrant a film that would not only speak to John and who he was and his talent, but also be something that you could watch today, and you could, have, have that connective tissue to our modern lives. And so I'm really excited by the opportunity. That one is actually one that I am going to direct, which I'm very excited about. Because it's been a while since I've directed a doc, so I'm very, very excited to get back get back to doing that. And yeah, we still got a lot of work to do. So, hopefully it won't take too long. But I'm definitely excited by the opportunity and the chance for sure.
All right. And then before I let you go, I love a good entrepreneur story. You've got Hankskerchief, right? And so
Hankskerchiefs, however you want to pronounce it. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, but to play on the last name, I love it.
Yep.
They look wonderful. Looks like you have a lot of fun with them. How did that company come about?
I was actually at a San Francisco Giants game, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I was opening day. A few years ago. I don't remember what season it was because my memory is not as good as it used to be. I was at kerchiefs are just something that I've always carried with me. I've always had one on me, and I was at a Giants game up in San Francisco, and I just went, you want to know what would be fun is if I could design like a San Francisco Giants kerchief. And then it just sort of went from there. And I said, well, it costs quite a bit of money for sports licensing nowadays. So maybe I should just start smaller and then maybe work my way up to being able to do those kinds of things. And, it's another passion of mine. I'll be honest, I sort of fell into documentary filmmaking because I didn't have the patience to sit down and write a script, but I knew that I wanted to be a storyteller and work within, the parameters of storytelling. And so that's kind of how documentary came about, because I watched a bunch and I was into, photography and music and all of these sorts of things. And I was able to sort of funnel all of those interests into documentary films. Well, the kerchiefs are no different. I have a tremendous interest in graphic design and actually making things that you can physically hold in your hand. And so that just sort of seemed like a fun sort of path to go down and sort of basically just see how far I could sort of take it. And, if it becomes a real thing, then I fooled everybody and I fooled everyone because they really exist. So, yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, it has become a real thing, and it looks like you've had a lot of fun with it. Colin Hanks, actor, director, producer of the upcoming HBO documentary Say Hey, Willie Mays, that debuts November 8th on HBO, available to stream on HBO Max. This has been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me on Sports Business Radio.
No, thanks for having me, Brian. Appreciate it.